I was crying as my husband massaged my back to calm me down and my mum settled my baby. It was 11 p.m, Amelia was just 3 days old, and breastfeeding was really, really hard. Today, I'm sharing my breastfeeding story, the 3 struggles that I faced, and how I overcame 6 months of painful nursing to still be feeding my daughter at almost 2 years old. So keep watching. Many years ago, when my mum was nursing my twin sister and I, her nipple tore. And it was so badly torn, in fact, that she was convinced her nipple was about to fall right off. But she kept feeding anyway. Despite having many midwives tell her to just give up on that breast, she was convinced that she needed to persevere to continue breastfeeding twins. Now, I grew up hearing this story. So going into my own pregnancy, I knew that I wanted to breastfeed and that I might have to work hard for it, just like my mum did. But I suppose I didn't really think that I would struggle with breastfeeding. Even though I knew my mum's story, I still had a fairly idealized vision of what breastfeeding would look like. So today I'm sharing my story with you because I've had quite a few people say that they're shocked by how long I persevered with breastfeeding. I endured 6 months of painful feeds. So I'll quickly share the 3 specific struggles that I faced, as well as what kept me motivated to keep breastfeeding through it all. The first struggle was that my daughter had, and still has, a shallow latch. This was actually a particularly difficult journey for me because we had a home birth. When you birth in the hospital and you're having breastfeeding difficulties, you can just go and get a nurse to help you with breastfeeding. But my midwives only visited once every 24 hours in the postpartum period. Now, it's worth saying that I probably could have spoken up and asked them to visit again, but it felt like even when they came, they would help me get a good latch, everything seemed okay, and then when they left and I tried again, it just wasn't working. I could not get my daughter to open up her mouth wide enough. I actually ended up doing a lot of skin-to-skin contact in the first week of life, simply because I was trying to avoid feeding her. And when she was sleeping on top of me, she slept for much longer periods of time. Now, our second struggle came at 3 weeks old when I got mastitis. I woke up in the early hours of the morning feeling awful, totally horrendous. And I shook Stephen, my husband, and I was like, go and get the thermometer. I think I've got a fever. I feel so gross. And my temperature was 39.4 degrees Celsius, which is very high. And I was like, that explains why I feel so terrible. It didn't really click that I had mastitis, although I was pretty sure that I did. But my husband, it's funny looking back on it, he didn't believe me. He thought that I was exaggerating, and he said something along the lines of like, oh, please Liz, go back to sleep. The thermometer must be broken. And that was part of the reason why mastitis was such a difficult journey for me, because neither my husband nor I realized how serious it is. Personally, I didn't realize how quickly a lump can turn into an infection. I noticed that my breast was hard in the morning, and by that evening I had a raging temperature, and for some reason I assumed that I had a bit more time than that to clear a lump before it got infected. And my husband simply didn't realize how serious mastitis is. And so he went to work that morning and I was left alone with our daughter, and that was really stressful because I felt like I couldn't even pick her up because I felt really weak. I had the fever and we just chilled out in bed all day together. In the end, I went to the doctor that day. She told me it was mastitis and I got antibiotics, which brought me to our third struggle. I got nipple thrush from the antibiotics. My daughter was nearly 1 month old by this stage, and I could not figure out why breastfeeding was hurting again. We had spent so much time working on her latch and finding comfortable positions, and I just could not figure out what was going wrong. So I went down to our local breastfeeding clinic and the lactation consultant watched me feed, and she agreed with me that that latch should not be hurting me. But as I described the pain to her, she quickly identified it as nipple thrush. Interestingly enough, Nipple thrush doesn't have any visible signs on your nipple, but it does come with a very distinct pain. Unlike latch issues, which hurt the actual nipple, nipple thrush has a sharp shooting pain. And it literally feels like there's a whole heap of small, sharp needles being dragged through your milk ducts and out through your nipple. It's really awful. So I started treating it straight away. I essentially did everything that you're supposed to do to treat it, but it just wouldn't budge. After 3 weeks, I went back to the lactation consultant and she told me the bad news. Unfortunately, some women just do not respond to treatment and you have to let your body clear the thrush naturally. Unfortunately for me, it took my body 5 months to clear the thrush naturally. And I actually distinctly remember the moment that I realized the thrush had gone. It was about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Amelia was 6 months old and I was sitting there feeding her and I thought to myself, oh my goodness, it hasn't hurt to feed her all day long. And I was so excited, I immediately called my husband and I was just thrilled, telling him it doesn't hurt, the thrush must be gone. It's been all day and every feed has gone well. I had endured 6 months of agony. I would literally seize up when Amelia latched on and I had to remind myself to breathe and relax because I didn't want her to think that I hated breastfeeding. And quite often I was just crying because it was so painful to feed. But the day had finally come when breastfeeding just worked and I was able to enjoy it 100%. Now for any mums to be watching, I don't want my story to freak you out. There are plenty of women out in the world who have no issues whatsoever with breastfeeding, and I truly hope that you are one of those. But for those of you that do come up against breastfeeding hurdles, I want to encourage you that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you can do it, just taking it one feed at a time. At least in my experience, it was so worth the perseverance. And it's such a beautiful thing now that my daughter is almost 2 years old and she just adores breastfeeding. And both my husband and I are so thrilled every time we see her get excited and ask to feed. It's such a beautiful thing and there are so many treasured memories and moments that I would have missed out on if I had have given up on breastfeeding. Now, there were lots of different things that helped me get through those difficult times of breastfeeding, but I'm going to share 3 things in particular today. The first thing that really helped was that I kept a vision of what I wanted breastfeeding to be like. I knew that it could be a positive, beautiful, and comfortable thing. And even though that wasn't my reality, what I was currently experiencing did not line up with that, I knew that it was possible and I kept that in mind and I continued to look forward to it even through the obstacles that I faced. The second thing that helped me was being completely 100% determined to breastfeed. Because I was anatomically able to breastfeed, I had plenty of milk. There was no way in my mind that my daughter was getting a formula. No matter what I had to do, I was going to breastfeed. Now, I do understand that there are some women who physically can't breastfeed, and this is not a judgment on those women or even on the women who choose not to breastfeed. This was simply about me and my baby. I had milk and I was going to breastfeed. And the only thing standing in our way were each of these different hurdles. But I knew each of these hurdles could be overcome. So formula was just never an option for me. And the third thing that got me through was my support system. All of the people closest to me knew how important breastfeeding was to me and they supported me through it. On the really hard days, my husband was happy to come home from a long day at work and cook and clean for our family. Knowing that he was on the sidelines cheering for us, that he wanted breastfeeding to succeed as much as I did, that was a huge encouragement during those really difficult days. Now, I hope that this has been encouraging. as much as breastfeeding was a struggle for me, I'm thankful for my story. I'm glad that I'm here almost 2 years later, still breastfeeding. And although it was a difficult journey, I'm glad we walked it. And I'm thankful for the breastfeeding relationship that my daughter and I have now. So I really do hope that this has been encouraging for you. In the coming weeks, I've got videos coming out that explain in detail how I overcame each of these different hurdles and some of the things that I learnt about mastitis and thrush and oversupply and all sorts of things along my breastfeeding journey. Things that have really, really helped me and have helped other mums in my life when I've shared them with them. So look forward to those videos and subscribe to my channel so that you'll be notified when they come out. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Daddy, is Daddy gonna take you to play? Outside?
Sure.
Outside, in the sunshine.
Just sun.
My husband's like, I'm so tired, I feel like I could just fall asleep. I was doing my makeup and my eyes are actually literally black. Literally. So I'll quickly share the 3 struggles. That one's really annoying. And that meant, but as I